My girlfriend cheated on me and told me I would never find someone like her because I wasn't worthy. A year later, I started dating a model who had been in love with me for years. The other day, I was scrolling through Reddit when I stumbled across this post about a guy whose girlfriend was cheating on him openly, like she didn't even care. She was just completely upfront about it, as if it was no big deal. It was crazy, and it got me thinking about my own ex-girlfriend. I haven't really shared this story with many people, mostly because it's a bit long, and to be honest, it was pretty painful at the time. But after reading that post, I figured why not? Might as well put it out there. This all went down about 2 years ago, so keep that in mind. I met my ex, let's call her Chloe, on a dating app. It wasn't one of those casual hookup apps. This was one of the more serious ones, where people supposedly go looking for real relationships. Or at least, that's what they claim. Anyway, I was 33 at the time, and she was 30. We matched, started chatting, and there was this instant connection. It's hard to put into words, but we just clicked. We had the same sense of humor, liked the same kind of things, and could talk for hours without getting bored. It felt different. It felt refreshing. After a couple of weeks of talking online and over the phone, I finally asked her out on a real date. To be honest, I was a little nervous. She was stunning. I don't just mean pretty or cute. She was the kind of beautiful that turns heads, the kind that makes people do double takes. I'm not saying I'm bad-looking or anything. I think I'm a decent-looking guy, but Chloe was on a whole different level. I remember thinking at the time that I probably wasn't looking for anything super serious with her, just because, well, girls like that usually have a lot of options. I didn't want to set myself up for heartbreak. I know it sounds like a weird thing to worry about, being with someone too attractive, but it comes with its own set of problems. Anyway, she said yes to the date, and it was amazing. It confirmed everything I'd already felt from our conversations. After that, we started seeing each other regularly, and before long, we made it official. Things are great, really great. But there was always this little thing lingering in the back of my mind. Chloe got a lot of attention from other guys, and she wasn't shy about mentioning it. Sometimes, even when we were together, guys would hit on her right in front of me. She'd also get a ton of messages on social media, and every now and then, she'd bring it up in conversation. At first, I wasn't too bothered. I trusted her. I really believed she wasn't interested in anyone else, that she was genuinely into me. I know, pretty naive, but at the time, I just wanted to enjoy being with her without turning into the jealous, insecure boyfriend. Everything was going great, but there was one moment that stuck with me. One night, we were having one of those late-night conversations where you talk about random things, and the topic of hall passes came up. If you're not familiar, it's this hypothetical game where you and your partner each pick one celebrity you'd be allowed to sleep with. No consequences, no hard feelings. It's supposed to be lighthearted, just for fun, but sometimes it says a lot about a person. What struck me as odd was that she brought it up. Usually, I was the one who started those kind of silly conversations. She casually mentioned that her hall pass would be Justin Timberlake. Fair enough, good-looking guy. But then she said something that stuck with me. I don't think there are many celebrities who would say no to me. She said it with this little smirk, like she was completely serious. Now, I already knew she was beautiful, but hearing her say it like that, it just didn't sit right with me. It was like she was acknowledging that she could have almost any guy she wanted, and that was an uncomfortable thought. It also felt out of character. She'd always come across as pretty down-to-earth, despite her looks, but this felt arrogant. I didn't say anything at the time. I just laughed it off, and we moved on to another topic. But that comment stuck with me. For days, I kept thinking about it. Eventually, the feeling faded, and life went back to normal. But I never completely forgot about it. Who knew what they were doing? Someone who could actually get me real answers. I did a little research online and found a guy who specialized in cases like this. He had great reviews and a solid reputation. So I decided to give him a call. We talked for a bit, and I told him everything, the weird behavior, the late nights, the vague excuses. He listened carefully and then laid out how he'd handle it. He'd follow her, discreetly document everything, take photos, videos, whatever proof he could gather. It wasn't cheap, but at that point I didn't care. I needed to know. So a couple of days later, he started his work. I went about my usual routine, acting normal, pretending like I didn't suspect a thing. Every time she came home late or gave me one of her half-hearted explanations, I just nodded and played along, but inside I was just counting the minutes waiting for that call from the investigator. It didn't take long, maybe 4 days before I got a message from him, saying he had something and that we should meet in person. My stomach dropped. I knew what that meant deep down. I already knew what he was going to tell me, but part of me still clung to the tiny shred of hope that maybe I was wrong. We met at a small coffee shop a few miles from my apartment. He had this serious look on his face as he slid a folder across the table to me. I hesitated for a second, but then I opened it, and there was clear as day photos of her with another guy meeting up at a bar, laughing, holding hands, leaving together, and then the final nail in the coffin, the two of them entering a hotel arm in arm. I just stared at the pictures, my hands gripping the edges of the folder so tight they started shaking. I felt sick. My face was hot, but my whole body was cold. The investigator kept talking something about how he'd followed her for a few nights, how this wasn't just a one-time thing, how they'd been meeting up regularly. But I barely heard him. I was too busy staring at the evidence right in front of me. My girlfriend, the woman I'd trusted, the woman I thought I had a future with, was sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face. And the worst part was she wasn't even being careful. She didn't even care enough to hide it properly. After a while, I closed the folder, took a deep breath, and thanked the investigator for his time. He asked me if I needed anything else, but I just shook my head and left. I drove home in complete silence, my mind racing with 100 different thoughts. What was I going to do? How was I going to confront her? Would she even try to deny it? Probably. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to hear whatever excuse she'd come up with, because at the end of the day, there was no excuse for this. That night, I sat in our apartment waiting for her to come home. I didn't even bother texting or calling to ask where she was. I already knew she was with him, and honestly, that just made everything easier. When she finally walked through the door, looking all tired and disheveled, I just stared at her. She noticed right away that something was off and asked what was wrong. I didn't say anything at first, just pulled out the folder and tossed it on the table. She frowned, looked at it, then opened it, and the second she saw the pictures, her whole face changed. And that's when I knew for sure she wasn't sorry, she wasn't guilty, she was just caught. She didn't even try to deny it. That was the part that hit me the hardest. No gaslighting, no fake outrage, no scrambling for excuses, just silence. She stared at me for a long moment, then sighed and looked down at her hands like she'd been expecting this conversation. How long? I asked, my voice steadier than I thought it would be. She hesitated, then said, a couple of months. A couple of months. It felt like a slap to the face. While I'd been agonizing over my suspicions, losing sleep, torturing myself with possibilities, she'd been sneaking off to be with this guy, lying to my face over and over again. Why? I asked, though I wasn't even sure I wanted to hear the answer. She ran a hand through her hair and let out another sigh. I don't know, she mumbled. Things just happened. I laughed. An actual laugh, but there was nothing funny about it. Things just happened. That's the best you've got? She flinched, but didn't say anything. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out how to play this, whether she should beg for forgiveness or just accept that it was over. Who is he? I asked. Cody. Where'd you meet him? She swallowed hard. He's just someone I met at the gym. Of course. The gym. All those extra hours she'd been spending there. The sudden interest in working out. It all clicked into place, and I hated myself for not seeing it sooner. I shook my head. You could have just told me if you weren't happy. You could have been honest instead of sneaking around like a coward. She finally looked up, eyes red-rimmed, and whispered, I never wanted to hurt you. Then why did you? My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated that she could still affect me like that. She had no answer, just silence. And that was when I knew. This wasn't something we could come back from. Pack your stuff, I said, standing up. I want you out tonight. She looked shocked, like she hadn't expected me to actually kick her out. Wait, can we just talk about this? I messed up, I know, but... No, I cut her off. You don't get to cheat and then decide what happens next. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't care. Not anymore. I walked out of the room and didn't look back. On social media, and saw that she had deleted every single picture of us together. It was like she was trying to erase me from her life, like our relationship had never even happened. And honestly, that hurt more than I expected. I knew we were done. I knew I could never forgive her, but seeing how quickly she moved to act like I never existed, that stung. Then the text changed. She started getting desperate. No more sarcasm, no more mocking. Now it was all I'm sorry, and I made a mistake, and please, just talk to me. She even tried the classic, it didn't mean anything. You know that. It was just a stupid mistake. But I wasn't buying it. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or missing an appointment, not sneaking around behind my back for who knows how long. I didn't reply to any of her messages. I was done, but then she showed up at my motel. Just knocked on the door like everything was normal. I didn't want to open it, but I knew if I didn't, she'd just keep trying. So I cracked it open, just enough to see her face. And she looked different. Less smug, less sure of herself. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping. "Can we talk?" she asked. I should have slammed the door in her face. I should have told her to leave and never come back. But some part of me, the part that still couldn't believe this was really happening, let her in. She sat on the edge of the bed, wringing her hands, and I just stood there, arms crossed, waiting for whatever speech she had rehearsed. And sure enough, she started with, "I messed up. I know I did, but you have to understand." I cut her off right there. "No, I don't have to understand anything. You cheated. You lied. And then, when I confronted you, you laughed in my face. So what exactly am I supposed to understand?" She looked away, biting her lip, and I could tell she was scrambling for something to say. Something that would make me second-guess myself. But there was nothing. I was scared. She finally said, "Of what?" "Of losing you." I almost laughed. "So you cheated on me because you were afraid of losing me? That makes a lot of sense." "I mean it," she insisted. Things between us, they got so routine, so predictable. I felt like we were just roommates, like we weren't even really a couple anymore. And Cody, I held up a hand. "Stop. Do not say his name to me." She sighed, frustrated, like I was the one being unreasonable. "I'm not excusing it. I thought it wouldn't matter. I thought you'd never find out." I let that hang in the air for a second. "So if I never found out, you'd still be doing it?" She didn't answer. That was it. That was all I needed. I walked to the door, opened it, and looked at her. "We're done." She stared at me, her eyes wide, like she still didn't believe it. Like she really thought she could talk her way out of this. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "Yes, I do." And for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I had control again. Like I wasn't just reacting, but making a choice. She stood up slowly, walked past me, and paused in the doorway. "You'll regret this," she muttered. I didn't say a word, just watch her walk away. And when the door shut behind her, I let out a breath I hadn't even realized I was holding. It was over. For real this time. And even though it hurt, even though I felt like I'd been gutted, I knew, deep down, that I'd made the right choice. Deeper level. She wasn't just this beautiful, untouchable model. She was funny, down to earth, and surprisingly open with me. She told me how exhausting the job could be, how fake a lot of people in the industry were, and how sometimes she just wanted something real, something stable. I didn't know if I could be that for her, but I was enjoying our conversations way more than I expected. She was easy to talk to, and the more we chatted, the more I started to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: excitement. After a couple of weeks of talking nonstop, Veronica told me she'd be back in the States for a bit and asked if I wanted to meet up. Of course, I said yes. We planned to meet at a quiet little cafe downtown. Her choice, which I appreciated. No fancy restaurants, no flashing cameras, just the two of us talking over coffee. I was nervous. I mean, I wasn't the same guy I was in high school, and she definitely wasn't the same girl. She was a literal model, for crying out loud. What if I didn't live up to whatever idea she had of me? What if she saw me in person and realized she'd made a mistake? When I got to the cafe, I spotted her immediately. Even in a simple sweater and jeans, she looked incredible. But the moment she smiled at me, all my nerves disappeared. She stood up, gave me a big hug, and said, "It's so good to see you in real life again." We talked for hours. About life, about relationships, about the things we regretted and the things we still hoped for. And the craziest part? She wasn't just being polite. She was actually interested in me, in my life and my stories. It felt different from anything I'd had with Chloe. At one point, She hesitated, playing with the edge of her coffee cup, then said, "I know this might sound weird, but I always thought you were kind of different." In a good way. Like someone who actually listens, someone who doesn't care about all the shallow stuff. I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't used to hearing things like that, especially after Chloe. We ended up walking around the city for a while after coffee, just talking. It felt natural, easy. When we finally said goodbye, she gave me a quick kiss on the cheek and said, "Let's do this again soon." And that's how it started. We kept seeing each other whenever she was in town. It wasn't anything too serious at first, just two people enjoying each other's company. But as time went on, I realized I actually liked her. A lot. She wasn't just the stunning girl from high school or the model in the magazines. She was smart, kind, and, most importantly, real. For the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe I was the one who was out of someone's league. And man, that was a great feeling. Deeper level, even though we were thousands of miles apart, after a couple of weeks of talking almost every day, it really started to feel like we were dating. We hadn't officially called it that. But it definitely felt like more than just friends, so I decided to be a little corny and just ask her what do we. She laughed and said that we were really good friends, but that she'd love to be more. I took that as my cue and asked her if she wanted to be my girlfriend. She said yes immediately without any hesitation. It was such a great feeling. Now, obviously, the whole long-distance thing was a challenge. She was a model traveling all over the world, and I was here with my regular job. ID had a long-distance relationship when I was younger, and I absolutely hated it. It was so hard to maintain that connection, to feel like you were actually part of each other's lives. But this was different. This was Veronica, and she meant so much to me already that I was willing to do whatever it took to make it work. So I booked a flight to Brussels to visit her. She was going to be there for a few weeks working on a project, and I figured it was the perfect opportunity to see her and to experience a little bit of her world. The trip was absolutely beautiful. Brussels itself was amazing, of course, but being with Veronica, there was just incredible. It was like a dream come true. It made me realize that I shouldn't give up on love just because of one bad experience, that there were still good people out there, people who were worth the effort. She even took me to one of her photo shoots. I got to watch her work, see her in her element. I cheered her on from the sidelines, took some pictures of my own. It was so cool to see her doing what she loved, and it made me feel even closer to her, like I was really a part of her life. So I'm in Brussels having the time of my life with Veronica. I took a bunch of pictures at the photo shoot, and I decided to post some of them on Instagram. I didn't post them to my main feed, though. I put them on my close friend story, thinking it would just be seen by a small group of people. Hey, race the thing. I completely forgot that my ex Chloe was still on my close friends list. I rarely use Instagram, and I just hadn't thought to block her there. I blocked her everywhere else, but not Instagram. Big mistake. A few hours after I posted the pictures, I get a message from her. Remember, we hadn't spoken in over a year at this point. And the message said, "Who's that? Why are you playing groupie?" Followed by a laughing emoji. I calmly replied, "That's my girlfriend." I didn't say anything else. She didn't reply. Right away, I could see the little typing indicator pop up and disappear multiple times over the next 10 minutes, like she was writing something, then deleting it, then writing something else. Finally, all she sent was a sarcastic "sure." That's when I decided to go for it. I told her that I didn't need to make her believe me, and then I said, "If you thought you were out of my league, then Veronica is out of this world." I also asked her how her man from back then was doing. I knew that would sting. She read the message, but she didn't reply, and then I blocked her on Instagram. I know, it was probably a little petty of me to say those things, but honestly, I felt like she deserved it, and I didn't want her to have any more access to my life, any more opportunity to try to get under my skin, even though I wanted to see her reaction. I will admit that. And that my friends is the story. It's been a wild ride, to say the least, but I can honestly say that I'm happier now than I've ever been. Veronica and I have been dating happily ever since the trip to Brussels, and I'm not going to lie, I'm thinking about proposing before the end of the year. Don't tell her, though. Veronica is truly a blessing in my life. She's kind, she's funny, she's intelligent, she's beautiful inside and out, and she makes me feel like the luckiest guy in the world. I'm so grateful that things didn't work out with Chloe, because if they had, I never would have met Veronica. I know some people might criticize me, might say, "Oh, he's just with her because she's a model where long distance never works," but I don't care. I'm not going to let anyone's negativity ruin what I have with Veronica. She's amazing, and am incredibly happy. If things don't work out down the line, you can come back here and tell me I told you. So, but God knows I really do not see myself writing another story here. So, yeah, that's it. That's my story. It's a story about betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately finding love and happiness in the most unexpected place. Thanks for listening or our reading, I guess.